What's up, curious sailors? It's Martina from Argentina, and the Ultimate World Cruise is getting ready to visit my city, Buenos Aires. So today I have prepared for you a local's guide to Buenos Aires. Our guests have asked for this, my fellow crew members have asked me for a lot of tips, so I've just put everything together in one video. I hope this helps, so leave a like if it does, let me know what you're gonna do. And from the bottom of my heart, I really hope that you enjoy it, because I love my city. And this is gonna be useful at any time that you watch it, even if you're going on a cruise to Buenos Aires or you're going on vacation to Buenos Aires. All these tips are gonna be helpful as well, so let's dive right in. So yes, I was born and raised in Buenos Aires, not far from the port, but this is one of the biggest cities of the world. It's one of the cultural capitals of the world, and it's such an international city. There's a lot to do. So on this video, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the highlights of each neighborhood, what to do in that area, what to eat, how to move around during your stay in Buenos Aires. But speaking of which, I want to kick it off with some fun facts about Argentina, shall we? Well, for starters, Argentina comes from the word argentum for silver, and El Río de la Plata, the river of silver, was the main way of transporting this metal out of what was a Spanish colony. El Río de la Plata is the widest river in the world. We can't even see Uruguay on the other side, and this is where the cruise ship is gonna dock. So you're gonna notice that it's not ocean water, it's river water, so yes, it's gonna be brown. We also boast the widest avenue in the world, which is 9 de Julio, 9 of July, our Independence Day. That's where our iconic obelisk is located. It's the 8th largest country of the world. We actually have the highest and lowest points of the American continent, Aconcagua being the highest peak of the American continent. And Ushuaia, yes, it's pronounced Ushuaia. I started pronouncing it Ushuaia because it has an SH, and all my family and friends have been teasing me because the SH does not make that sound in Spanish. Ironically, in our specific Spanish that is called the Rio Platense Spanish, which is from that river, so meaning Uruguay and Argentina, are the only two countries that speak with this accent, and we pronounce all the double L's and the Y's with the sh sound, but not Ushuaia because that's an SH. It's just really funny. Anyways, I was gonna say that Ushuaia is the southernmost city of the world. And yes, Argentina does claim a portion of Antarctica as well, because we have a border with that region, so we do have bases there. And speaking of territory, I have to touch base a little bit on the Malvinas Islands. I don't want to get into this topic too much, but basically this territory is recognized as Argentinian territory, and we consider it as occupied by the English, who refer to them as the Falklands. During our military government that we had in Argentina during the 70s, we did go to war to try to reclaim the islands. But this is a dark chapter in our history. I'm not gonna get into it, but I just wanted you to know that this is considered contended territory. On a happier note, south of Argentina, we have the largest population of Magellanic penguins. I have no clue if I pronounced that properly. We say pingüinos de Magallanes, but that's that. And some other random facts is that we invented things like the ballpoint pen, the first football, so that's soccer for our American friends. We invented the football ball that was sewn from the inside instead of the outside visible leather sewing. I guess that didn't get to American football yet, but yes, in Uruguay they had the first World Cup of football, and we were the ones that sewed it from the inside for the first time to make it easier. But funnily enough, our national sport is not football, it's pato, very similar sport to polo, which is also huge in Argentina. Horse breeding is huge in Argentina, but pato is played by catching the ball that has ropes all around it, but very similar. And last random fact is that Argentina is the country with the highest number of psychologists per capita. Anyways, let's start talking a little bit about all the neighborhoods that you can visit in the city of Buenos Aires. Since we're arriving on the Ultimate World Cruise, I'm gonna start from the passenger port. Unfortunately, there has been a big storm just a couple of days before we arrived into the city, something honestly unheard of. So our passenger terminal got damaged. So we're gonna have to take shuttle buses off of the ship through the marina until we get to the street. At that point, you must take an Uber or a taxi into town, because this is an industrial area where you don't want to be walking and you don't want to be catching any public transport. So yeah, just take an Uber. That's super easy. You already probably have the app from back at home. You're gonna want that taxi or that Uber to take you to Retiro Central Station. There you can get your SUBE card. SUBE basically means get on board. It's our transportation card with which you can pay for buses, for the train, and for the subway system. Right now, $1 is more or less 1,000 pesos. But the important thing to know is that we have a blue market, and exchanging your money basically on the street with people that will offer you to exchange will give you a couple hundred pesos more per each dollar that you would get if you use your card. And again, tying that topic now to safety on the street, like any other capital of Europe and the world, just be aware of pickpockets, please. Normal things, your camera, your wallet, your phone. It's not a dangerous place. There's no guns. There's not waves of kidnappings. There's no military police walking around or the cartel and things like that. Just be careful, like in any other touristic big city. All right, so we made it to Retiro. This is a neighborhood, one of my favorite neighborhoods, let me tell you. Right outside the beautiful central train station of Retiro, you have a beautiful park called Parque San Martín or Plaza San Martín. You can walk up the steps through that park into a beautiful area of Buenos Aires with a lot of grand palaces that have been later converted into, for example, the military club, one of the most beautiful buildings there. In this building, you have a weapons museum that also tells you a little bit the story of the Malvinas conflict. And there's a beautiful restaurant inside as well, a perfect spot for brunch. That leads you straight into the walking street of Florida. The street is full of shops where you can get your souvenirs, your leather goods, really big in Argentina, and I would suggest just enjoy the architecture in general, and also step into Galerías Pacífico, a really nice high-end mall that has beautiful decorations on the inside and really shows you how lavish Buenos Aires used to be. This is the basic tourist spot. So start your day there. You're even gonna see tango dancers in the street here, so I think it's a great place to visit if you don't wanna get too far. Continuing into the heart of the city, you will get to the city center, Zona Centro, where you can visit, as I mentioned, the obelisk and the widest avenue of the world, 9 de Julio. And around this area, you can visit Teatro Colón, our national opera house, one of the best opera houses in the world for its acoustics. It's huge and beautiful. Also around that area, you can visit the Ateneo Grand Splendid. Ateneo is a chain of bookstores, and the Grand Splendid was the theater that was used as a location for this bookstore. And then you can also visit Palacio Barolo. That is a fantastic building. The architecture of Buenos Aires is just stunning all around, a lot of French-inspired buildings. But basically it was designed following Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. So it's a great building to visit. And it has a bar in the rooftop. I'm gonna touch base on all that foodie stuff in the next section of the video. Near this area, you can walk down Corrientes Avenue that houses all of the theaters and some iconic pizza parlors over there as well. If you continue down that way back towards the river, you can visit the first square of Buenos Aires, that is Plaza de Mayo, where basically you can visit a lot of museums related to our history of our government, like Casa Rosada, the Pink House, which is the house of the government. If you continue farther away, you would get to La Boca neighborhood. This is where La Bombonera is placed, which is the stadium for Boca Juniors, one of the two biggest football teams of Buenos Aires. I live nearby River Plate Stadium, but that's on the other side of the city. Boca Juniors is called La Bombonera, which is basically the bomb box, because it's really tight fit in the middle of a busy city. Actually, the stadium has one of the sides cut off to fit in that tight place. And this is nearby Caminito, an iconic tango place where all the Italian immigrants gathered when they first came into Buenos Aires. Just a note of this area, this is probably the most touristic area of Buenos Aires, and the one that I would say be the most careful of pickpockets, because as well it's in the middle of not the nicest neighborhood of the city. So just be aware of that. You maybe want to take an Uber or a taxi right there and instead of walk. Here you have a few cultural things as well to do. Tango is the highlight, and a lot of souvenir shopping as well, especially we're going to be there on a weekend, which is probably going to be quite busy. And one cultural tip is that the factory where they produce all the set pieces for the Colón Opera House. So that's another cultural activity that I would highly recommend. So if we circle back by the waterline, we would find Puerto Madero. That is one of the most exclusive areas of Buenos Aires. It's a recycled industrial port of the city where you will find really high-end dining, just beautiful place for an evening stroll. There's as well 2 historical ships at the port there that you can visit, as well as a museum of art. Almost all the restaurants in this area would be highly recommended, but of course they will be at a high-end price for tourists. Now I left my favorite neighborhood for last, which is Recoleta. This is again a really high-end neighborhood of Argentina with a lot of old grand apartments. Actually, my mother, as I said, she's an architect. She works in this area. She works for a lot of foreign clients from all around the world, from Australia, from the UK, from the USA, from Canada. A lot of people are buying these beautiful historical properties. They're mostly grand apartments, and they are recycling them into new and visiting for during the summertime, or also using them for Airbnbs. We're talking, high ceiling, beautiful Parisian style apartments with wooden parquet floors. So yeah, if you're interested in an investment like that in the Southern Hemisphere, just hit me up. We'll put you in contact with my mom, who is, by the way, cruising, so you can even meet her on board. How fancy is that? I can't wait. Anyways, going back to my favorite neighborhood of Recoleta. This is where you will also find El Cementerio de la Recoleta. This is the cemetery of the most renowned names of the city of Buenos Aires and Argentina in general. There's a lot of tours to visit it. It's beautiful, very monumental, and it holds a lot of history as well. And all the area around it is stunning. There's a lot of restaurants, either for dinner with the view of all the sculptures of the cemetery, or as well for brunch. And there's some huge historical trees there as well. Actually, it's quite sad because this storm that I was mentioning earlier has fallen a lot of trees around the city. We boast huge antique trees. We had a lot of landscaping done in the city of Buenos Aires by Carlos Thais, a French landscape artist, and it's just a pity to see all these things damaged, because that's one of the highlights that I would recommend, that you just walk around these grand parks and lakes that were created just for strolling, And a lot of these trees have been damaged, unfortunately, including our Floralis generica, that is basically a huge metal sculpture of a flower that opens and closes during the day. It has been damaged by the high winds, so that's quite unfortunate. But moving on, this northern corridor, this is a place that every time I'm driving through there, I just look out the window and I say to myself, I can't believe I live in such a beautiful, beautiful city. In this area, you're going to be able to visit museums holding an incredible collection that is totally free. The Decorative Arts Museum is a stunning house, has a great restaurant inside the same restaurant that is in the other palace that I mentioned in Retiro, and the Latin American Art Museum of Buenos Aires. But just in general, watching all these grand houses, that most of them are embassies now, is really, really beautiful. Last but not least, Palermo is a great neighborhood if you are looking for designer goods, interior design and clothing design by smaller brands or just independent designers. There's a lot in this area, which is actually called Palermo Soho, and then the nightlife is big, big, big there. So here you will find a lot of themed bars and a lot of speakeasy bars, and you will find cuisines from all around the world. Guys, Argentinians love to go out. And a note on that, we like to go out really late. So restaurants are not gonna open until at least 8, I would say. And then the nightlife continues all night long. But I do suggest you make reservations in this area because it gets pretty full. And I want to retrace back to San Telmo, that is very close to the central area that I was talking earlier. That's the neighborhood that you can go for antiques. That's where my mother, as an architect / interior designer, buys a lot of furnishings for these grand apartments that she recycles. So let's move along to food and bars. As I said before, in Palermo you have a lot of speakeasies, you have a lot of themed bars, and then in the central area of the city you will find a lot of rooftop bars with stunning views. So highly recommend that you look up some rooftop bars in the city. Now, what to eat? Let's start by that. You will think, oh, Argentinian meat, steak. Well, the first thing that you're gonna look for is asado, is parrilla. That's barbecue. That's much, much better than a steak. For sure, a steak is gonna blow your hat off because our meat is amazing and we love it. We literally have barbecue competitions. We have national championships of barbecuing. So that's, I think, an even better search than steak is asado, parrilla. So things that you can find in traditional Argentinian restaurants as well as meats are things like provoleta, which is a cheese that is made on top of the fire as well. You're gonna find a lot of parts of the animal being barbecued, and I highly recommend that you go without fear and you try it because every part is just dreamy. You will also find empanadas that are a typical beef pastry. It can also be vegetarian as well with other type of ingredients. You can have things like tortas fritas, for example, that are just a little fried pastry. From the north of Argentina, you can find plates like humita, which is polenta, baked usually with meat inside of the leaf of corn. And this type of food, you'll usually find it in restaurants that will say regional food, by the way. Because this is not so typical of Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is known for being the city of immigrants, mainly Italian and Spanish, so as well pasta and Spanish dishes like tortilla de papa, flan, pizza, pasta from Italy, and ice cream, huge one, are gonna be amazing in Buenos Aires. And also Asian food has become very popular, as well as Middle Eastern food, really good as well. Like for example, Armenian. Other typical dishes can be, for example, milanesa, which is a very thin piece of meat, breaded on both sides, kind of like a schnitzel, but with a different type of breading, very typical. Sometimes you can have it with ham and cheese on top. There's whole restaurants dedicated to this. But let's move on to desserts. This is, again, a lot of influence from other countries. We have amazing pastries. Imagine France and multiply it. Honestly, first of all, at a restaurant you can have panqueques, which are basically crepes with dulce de leche. I should have started by that. Dulce de leche, the most noble of sweet things. Imagine caramel, but instead of making it with syrup and water, it's just milk cooked with sugar made into the softest of sweets, and it goes in everything. So let's start by that, dulce de leche. Now, what you can have with dulce de leche is the question. Panqueques, like crepes. You can have flan with dulce de leche and whipped cream. You can have little cones of dulce de leche. Those are great to take as a souvenir. A very Argentinian cake is the chocotorta. It's usually homemade, but you can find it in restaurants as well. It's made with Argentinian cookies, cream cheese, and dulce de leche, eaten frozen, so it's amazing. You can also put it inside of churros and on ice cream. Argentinian ice cream is just... Imagine there's an Argentinian ice cream shop that opened in Rome and is super popular. Because yeah, we hold strongly to our Italian heritage, especially again in Buenos Aires, which is not the whole of Argentina. So you definitely have to try the ice cream. It's not from the supermarket. No, somebody will actually put it into a cone for you and it's homemade. Some other sweets that you can try that are Argentinian are bonobon. It's very popular as well to take it as a souvenir, but the queen of all the Argentinian souvenirs and sweets is el alfajor, of course. 2 discs of dough, kind of like a cookie, I guess, but more crumbly, dulce de leche in the middle, and bathed in chocolate. Get those, please, whatever you do. And then talking about pastries, just going to any pastry shop, and it's mind-blowing. Honestly, I haven't seen this in basically almost any other place. The amount of French style pastries, but especially I want to recommend to you the media luna. That's like a croissant, but instead of crumbly, it's soft like a cloud, and it's lightly painted with like a sugary syrup on top. Oh my god, it will change your life. Because this is very important, because it's what we have with mate, our national drink. This is a South American drink. It's not only ours, but it's very popular, for example, in Uruguay as well, as you've seen a lot of us drinking it from a cup with the yerba mate inside, which is the tea, with a special straw that is called bombilla, that has a filter, so you then just soak all that tea leaf with hot water or cold. I like to have it with lemonade, which is very typical in the north of Argentina, called tereré. Yeah, you submerge all that tea in water and you drink from the straw, and that's something very typical for you to take from Argentina as well, or from Uruguay, that we're also gonna be there. All right, I think those are the main points that I can think of right now. There's probably a lot more that I'm gonna remember later, but to finish off, I just wanted to recommend what experiences you can do as a tour, for example. First, I would recommend the open top buses. There's a yellow bus that belongs to the city that is great for moving around if you don't want to do the public transportation, because really the city is so beautiful that going around in that bus will give you panoramic views of all the architecture. And then obviously you have tango shows, tango evenings with dinner. That's obviously highly recommended. We're gonna have a tango show on board the Serenade of the Seas that I will probably miss because I'm gonna go see my friends from home. And finally, the big recommendation that I want to give you, if you're not going to the Iguazu Falls that most of our world cruisers are going to, because that actually requires a plane to go there. It's so far from Buenos Aires. It's in the jungle next to Brazil and Paraguay, which is, by the way, the longest broken waterfall in the world. So if you're not going on that tour, but you want to do something more typical, and you probably heard about gauchos, well, there's a lot of day trips into the province of Buenos Aires, into more what you would call, the farmlands, the ranches of Buenos Aires, where again we keep horses and cattle. And what is the gaucho? Is it a cowboy? I wouldn't say. This is a concept that also exists in Brazil with a slightly different pronunciation. To my understanding, this culture comes a lot from the Basque country, where actually my family is from, in the north of Spain. Basically a really rugged man that takes care of cattle and is really adept at riding horses and making barbecues, has his trusty knife and some boleadoras as well, and dances more typical Argentinian dances like malambos and chacareras. So that's also another very important thing, that tango is very specific to the immigrants of Buenos Aires, to the porteño culture. Porteño comes from the port, right? I would be considered a porteña. But there's other fantastic rhythms in the country that I really suggest that you give a chance. Actually, I prefer them. I enjoy them much more. Tango is very sad and melancholic, where our other rhythms are about celebration of life and our strong gaucho image as well. And you will try all these typical foods in those day trips to these ranches, and you can ride horses, see horses and cattle. And honestly, I do this on weekends. Like, I love horse riding in the Pampas, which is basically the flatlands of Argentina. So highly recommended. And then of course, when we go down south to Patagonia, which is a region shared between Argentina and Brazil, we will see whales, dolphins, penguins, sea lions, and much more. So certainly a lot to do, and my family is coming on board. I'm so excited. I hope this guide was a good starting point for you to plan your day in Buenos Aires. As you can see, I love my city deeply, and I hope that you get to love it as well. So stay curious, and I'll see you next time. Ciao, ciao.